Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I am your host, Robert Santana, along with my co-host, Trent Jones.
Howdy, folks.
Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the topic of eating out, everybody's favorite topic.
Eating out or dining out?
Should we call it eating out? Well, you're doing both, right? You're dining, you're eating. I mean, how do you want to define these things?
I don't know, dining sounds so like luxurious.
Dining out. Dining out.
I'm dining out tonight.
I'm dining out.
Yeah, but let's be real. I think most people eat out.
They just eat out. That's what
yeah. We're hitting up the Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
Maybe a little McDonald's or something, and every once in a while you go to a nice restaurant too. But
I'd like to get the numbers on this, but I had a professor who was a friend of mine. He's into lifting and whatnot, and he's very much into the minimalist lifestyle. Tries to bike to work, etc. Make stuff by hand. Very cool guy. Yeah. And he was talking to me about. I don't even know if he was talking to me or if he wrote an article or if I read something when I was TAing his class. But it sounds like the kind of thing he would talk about. He might be listening. I don't know. He's a cool dude. But I don't know if he verbalized it to me. Either way, I read it through him in one way or another.
Yeah.
And unless I'm wrong, I don't think I am based on my experience on the ground, our society is eating away from home more than ever in history today.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. This came up on another podcast that I produce, You Need a Budget. It was either You Need a Budget or Beginning Balance, which is a sister podcast by the same folks. And they were talking about the amount of time that people spend eating dinner together as a family. Mm-hmm. This was from a survey like the 50s or 60s, I think, compared to recent years, like I think 2019 or 2018. Mm-hmm. And basically, like back in the 60s, according to some surveys that were done, people spent an average of 90 minutes together eating dinner.
Okay.
As a family.
This was in the 60s.
Now, how many of you, raise your hands, if you spent 90 minutes as a family eating together last night?
Crickets.
Yeah. Nobody, right? I think the average today is something like 15 minutes or something like that.
Damn.
But yeah, it's crazy, right? So it's actually kind of that was illustrative to me because it's like, oh, the problem is actually twofold, right? Number one is we're eating out a lot. Mm-hmm. But number two is we're also not eating together. And part of that 90-minute thing, it's not all that you're sitting down and eating food for 90 minutes. It's that part of that was preparation, mm-hmm. like the family's involved in like making the food together in some way. But it's actually like there's two sides to the coin here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't even know if I have a proper dinner time anymore, man.
Right. Yeah. You have to create one. You have to be pretty intentional about it to.
Yeah, Christy and I eat breakfast together pretty regularly. But dinner, she tends to wake up a little later than I do. I tend to wake up a little earlier than she does. And I'll tend to make breakfast by the time she's up. It's ready to go. But at night, I might be at the gym and or she might be working out in her garage gym. It just never seems to line up. That would take some effort, but I think it'd be worth it.
Well, she's Greek, right?
Yes.
For some reason, they all seem to like all these Mediterranean peoples all seem to eat like really late.
Really?
Like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I don't know. Have you noticed that?
No, her parents try to get me earlier. She likes to eat it, but her and her mom like to eat at night. I don't know about her. I don't know about her dad.
I don't know if that's like a Mediterranean thing, but I'm just saying, like all the people I know from families of Mediterranean descent all tend to eat dinner very late.
She likes to have a snack at night, and it's medium-sized snack. And when she tried to do, she's trying still. She just did a bikini show. This was the miserable part for her. She cannot go to bed hungry. She gets crabby.
Oh yeah,
and she has to after 9 o'clock. Man, it's like clockwork. She just has to eat something. And the point is that we're eating away from home more than ever in history, and there's a lot. We have more food options than have ever been available throughout history. We have a first world problem of too much food, and I don't know if this has ever been explored, if solutions have ever been arrived at, because I don't know if this has ever been an issue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, like most cultures, I think we pointed this out on the show before. Mm-hmm. Just about every culture I know of has some sort of fasting in their, like traditional culture, I should say, has some sort of fasting as an element in their culture. And, I kind of wonder if that's, I'm no anthropologist, but I kind of wonder if that was a way of sort of keeping the populace sort of primed for experiencing those times of famine that inevitably would come.
Like training.
It's sort of like a training, to keep them ready to, like, mentally ready to handle the hardships. It's sort of a little bit of voluntary hardship, for when the involuntary hardship comes. I don't know. I'm no anthropologist, like I said, but yeah, nowadays we have the completely opposite problem. There's so much food of so many varieties, and I think this is interesting. So all of these things we've pointed out so far, I think it's kind of a constellation of things that has led to our modern problem of eating out too much, and we're going to get into why that's a problem in just a second. I think most people recognize that it is, but we'll get into the specifics of that. But okay, so we have families are not eating together anymore. Like, why? Well, because our schedules are crazy. We also don't necessarily, like you said, we don't necessarily eat at rational times of the day. Like, we all have different energy levels as we go throughout the day, right? We have biorhythms, and we sort of kind of our alertness changes throughout the day as the sun moves and all this kind of stuff, right? We're getting into winter now, so those of us that are in more northern climates are experiencing less sunshine, right? And it changes your mood, it changes your energy levels throughout the day. So there's kind of a natural time that meals prepared at home will happen, because that's when you have the energy to make them and sit down and eat them. But when you're out of that rhythm, for whatever reason, it's very easy to go to a restaurant. And the restaurants are always open, they're always bright, they're always well lit, they're climate controlled. So they kind of disrupt our natural rhythms that we've had in traditional cultures. And I think there's something to that like when you go to a restaurant, it's not just that the food there is loaded with calories and all that kind of stuff, and you can eat too much of it. I think that they kind of prime you in this way to overeat, because they take you out of your natural environment. Mm-hmm. They sort of overwhelm you. Like, when's the last time you went to a mall?
Probably a year or two, probably pre-COVID. I haven't. I've been into I think I've been to an outdoor. Yeah, I was at the outdoor mall not too long ago, but like an indoor traditional shopping mall.
Like an actual, traditional shopping, American shopping mall.
Probably pre-COVID, or right when the malls reopened in 2020, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably the same for me.
Yeah.
I have this experience every time I go to the mall, because I make it a habit not to go.
Right.
Because I hate it. I walk in there, and after I go to like 2 stores, my brain is so just fogged. Like, I can't think straight. I don't know what I'm doing. I forgot my schedule. If I didn't have like stuff written down, I just have no idea where I am. It's like utterly bewildering. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's just enormous onslaught of advertisements and smells.
Yeah.
Like, they always load you up with. You ever walk into like the Abercrombie, like when you were younger?
Right? 20 years probably. Man,
that thing reeks of Polo, Ralph Lauren, or whatever. But it's just like, it's so overwhelming. There's the stimuli is so great and of such great magnitude that it completely wrecks your like natural sense of like where you are, what you should be doing, what your natural impulses are. Like you're in touch with like, am I hungry right now? Do I feel like I want to buy something right now? It's like a healthy person has sort of a gauge of where they are with all of their natural desires and how they change throughout the day and from week to week and all that stuff. You go to a mall though, and you're completely overwhelmed. It's like system malfunction, and then it's a lot easier to bring out the credit card. You're like, I don't even know if I want this thing that I'm buying anymore. I have no idea.
Right.
I came here for something, but I forgot what it was. And you're like, do I want to get the Chick-fil-A at the at the food court? It's like, well, yeah, because. But you see what I mean? Like, so it just disrupts, I think, a lot of our natural impulses, and that's a problem right there. But there's another problem too, right? And it's that this stuff eventually, for a lot of people, it ends up becoming chronic, right? Like, we may not be going to shopping malls all the time, but we end up embedding these eating out at restaurants as part of our day-to-day lifestyle, and that has some problems too, right?
Yeah, part of that is food technology has allowed for innovation in terms of, the taste of food, the types of foods available, etc.
Yeah.
And then also just the scalability. I mean, you can go and buy meat anywhere right now. Well, I don't know. There's empty shelves in some cities, but
Yeah.
you know,
Sort of.
yeah, sort of. You know, pre-COVID. Let's talk 2019. Under I guess normal circumstances, whatever that means anymore. 2 years ago, you could pretty much buy anything at any time. With some exceptions. Damn Greek yogurt was always sold out when I lived in LA. I'd run up there and want to get the brand I wanted, and it was all gone because it was 99 cents.
Yeah.
But few exceptions, you can buy from any food group, whenever, it's pretty available. The problem is, and I talked about this in the podcast I did with Starting Strength 2 years ago with Rip. I asked him, what was the grocery store like? Because he was born, 55, 56? I can't remember. So I asked him, what was the grocery store like in the 60s and 70s? And he said, well, we had a lot fewer options, like now you walk in and you have a million options for like everything,
Everything.
Yeah. And I feel like, and then what I've noticed is there's been this emphasis on variety. When I first started reading up on nutrition and getting interested in nutrition, and I started reading the mainstream fitness publications like Men's Fitness, Men's Health, etc., and just learning about coaching in general, and then going through my academic program, this concept of variety kept coming up over and over again because, well, people will get bored with eating the same thing, so you have to give them variety, right? And well, there's a couple things that pop in my mind now that I've been doing this long enough. Variety is a double-edged sword. What I find is when there's too much variety, there's low adherence to any sort of diet,
Yeah.
And when there's too little variety, there's low adherence to any sort of diet. So there's, a continuum there. And if you just kind of look throughout history and, just Rip's, little report there of, 60s and 70s Northern Texas, if you don't have a lot to choose from, you don't really think about variety, So part of the problem is that the food environment now is what, I consider a toxic food environment. You're up against that by default. You're already at a disadvantage because you have all these other things you have to think about. And now you have to worry about what foods to pick, and
I had this experience, and I think I talked about this on another podcast. It might have been the one we did on 40 Fit Radio. So
Probably.
Forgive me if y'all have heard this reference before. But I was in like a Kroger or something, and I needed some toothpaste, and that was it. I just popped in for some toothpaste.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, and I go to the toothpaste aisle, and I'm just like, I'm just staring at it for like, I don't know how long it was, but I just caught myself staring at it. And I'm like, what am I doing here? It's like, oh yeah, I came in here to grab toothpaste. This should be a pretty simple operation. Should not occupy much space in my brain. But there's like 55 types of toothpaste on the shelf. Like, which one do I want? Do I want the the whitening plus, or do I want the with scope? Or do I want the the fluoride extra, This just goes on and on and on, right? And they all look the same, and they're all about the same price, and they just have different graphics on them, and it's just impossible. Like it makes what should be a simple choice to just grab some toothpaste into something that occupies way too much brain power, right? And if you have to shop for the week, and you don't have a really good idea of what you want going in there, man, it's just overwhelming. Because it's with everything. You go to the bread aisle. There's 55 types of bread. There's 55 types of yogurt. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, and I think that this contributes to the issue of to the high prevalence of overweight obesity. I really strongly believe that. Because it's not just Christy once. Christy's my girlfriend. She once told me, I forgot where she read it, but humans like to eat in units. You want to get a unit of food, eat it, be done, right? The problem is there's a mismatch between the units of food that are widely available that you can easily access and the amount of calories in those foods and the amount of nutrients in those foods. Typically the fat, the sugar, it's typically fat, sugar, and salt, and not so much salt. I mean, there's a lot of salt in everything, but in terms of, adiposity or fatness, is the lay word for it. In terms of, putting on excess weight, calories are how you do that. And typically you might get a small unit of food that's easy to access, like, a donut or, candy bar or, bag of chips, or even a hamburger. And the size of it, there tends to be a mismatch with the amount of nutrients it's providing you, because those foods tend to be high in fat. They're high in carbs too for all the, sugar zealots that are probably listening to this. Oh, refined sugar. Yes, there's refined sugar in there too, but the added fat content that comes from, the grease and oils that they put in there to make it taste all delicious contributes too. And that's what fat makes a small morsel of food very dense in calories to a much greater extent than sugar,
Right. Yeah, we talked about the millionaire, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Or the praline or whatever.
I think so.
But yeah, it's like this little piece of candy that's just caramel and like nuts dipped in chocolate. It's like not even the size of the palm of your hand. And it's like 400 calories.
Yeah, exactly.
Donuts are the same way, right? And it's not, if you were to if that thing was just sugar, like pure sugar, it would be much bigger, right? You pointed that out. But no, the donut is actually kind of small for how many calories it delivers because it's soaked in oil.
Yeah. If you try to make a low-fat donut, which it's probably it's probably been done because all this stuff's been done, but it's probably gonna be bigger if it's the same caloric content. 500 calorie donut that's low in fat is going to be a lot bigger than one that's high in fat.
Yeah. So I think it should be pretty clear to you, dear listener, that the caloric density is a problem because our caloric needs are not, they're not that high relative to the access of food that we have, right?
Exactly.
The average dude is going to eat somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 calories, probably, right?
Yeah,
depending on
and if
your
he's
size.
and if he's training and he's strong, it's going to be higher.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm like, I'm 5'8", 195 pounds, and my weight's pretty stable. I eat about 2,800 calories a day.
Yeah, I'm probably about there.
And that keeps me pretty much right at 195. So, I don't even eat that many calories, and I've been training for a long time, and that's been my maintenance for a long time. And I know my maintenance, like just observing what I eat relative to other people that don't train, I know I eat a lot more food than they do. So but my caloric needs are not that high compared to the access to food I have. I can go get a hamburger across the street for lunch and eat 1,500 calories pretty easily.
Yeah.
Just for lunch, which is, that's more than half of my daily what I really need. So I think this is interesting when we talk about this caloric density problem vis-a-vis the variety problem, because we're calling it a problem.
I'd say it's a problem.
Yeah, I think one thing that happens is that we get fooled, if we let marketing have its druthers, we get fooled into thinking that because we're eating at certain types of restaurants, that we're somehow avoiding the problem of restaurant food in general, which is high caloric density, very high amounts of salt and sugars, very stimulating foods. And what I'm talking about here is I think most people recognize that when you go pound a Big Mac at McDonald's, that's not super healthy for you, right? I think most people recognize that. On the other hand, when you go to the chicken salad chick and get your salad with chicken, with the, it's probably, cage-free organic chicken, and it's got the nice avocado lime sauce on it, and it's got some corn and some vegetables mixed in there along with the salad greens, that's somehow categorically different than the Big Mac.
No, it's about
not.
the same. Yeah.
It's not. Sometimes the salad's actually worse. I hate to say it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I was in a class once, and the instructor I was working with at the time was talking about, they used to say fast food kills. That's been debunked. That one of the most unhealthiest foods in terms of caloric density, if you want to classify it that way, would be a salad at Cheesecake Factory. It's like 12 or 1,500 calories.
Yeah.
But it's, that's a decades-long marketing campaign that salad equals healthy, Big Mac equals unhealthy.
Right.
And that really depends, And then there's context, too. Big Mac every day is probably unhealthy. Probably don't even need one every week, but some people eat like that. But part of it is just this idea that you need variety. And when I look at people that have a poor diet, the the shit they eat is the same shitty food every day, you know?
Right.
So
right.
I'm like, you don't have variety right now, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But yet people seem to think they need variety, and the academics and the, you know, and the gurus, quote unquote, are in agreement on this, that, you know, we need all this variety when really you probably need less variety. I mean, sure, you know, it's like anything else, you know, when you're managing a budget, you have luxuries that you buy sometimes, you know. If you buy them
Sure.
all the
Yeah.
time, you might not, you know, have a lot of money left over, you know, or you might not be able to invest it in things that can make you money, you know. But typically, you
Right.
know, at least the way I was taught, you know, when you're budgeting, you know, you have your luxury expenses and you kind of put money aside for that, and you don't indulge all the time, you know. And this kind of comes back to what you were talking about earlier, where people used to practice fasting. I never understood it until there was a point where I was just, probably during COVID, I was eating more, just like a lot of people.
Right.
And it doesn't feel good to overindulge, you know, in anything, for that matter. And there's just something about having some sort of restraint that, you know, makes you feel a little bit better. You know, it's hard to explain, you know.
I think it's kind of a mental discipline thing, I guess, that, you know, to know that you can exercise control over your desires.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of freeing in a way.
Yeah.
To know it's like, I really want to eat, but I'm not going to, and I'm gonna exercise my will to not do that. And then if you do it successfully, you're like, oh wow, I found some control over myself that I didn't know I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all this stuff is worth pointing out, because some of you might be sitting there and be like, well, duh. I mean, I knew all this. Like, you can actually, at a lot of these restaurants now, you can look on the menu, sometimes even on the menu, but you can certainly go on their website, and you can find the caloric information for a lot of these foods. Like, you can go to McDonald's and get a breakdown of the calories. Some of them even publish macros, or at least some of the macros. Like, if you go to Brahms and get a double cheeseburger, they'll tell you how many, you know, grams of protein you're eating in the milkshake.
Yeah.
But we don't, as humans, make our decisions. Commonly, we don't make our decisions, or at least most of our decisions, by sitting around being like, okay, here's my macro budget for the day. Here's what I've got left in my budget. I want to go eat this fast food. Let me see if it stacks up, and, you know, I'm going to order my food according to that budget. Now, if you're actively doing that and tracking your macros, you're doing that. But most people aren't. Most people eat intuitively, and you can see how this becomes a problem, because this stuff is unconscious. You just sort of start doing it, and it becomes a habit, and then you know, months go by, and now you're overweight, and you're wondering what happened. Well, you've got to be aware of all these forces that are acting on you, because frankly, there's just too much brain power to have to, like, make decisions in that sort of budgeting style all the time.
Exactly. And that's a common complaint that I get. You know, I don't want to keep doing this forever, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't blame you. You have other things that are more important, and your brain is not wired to, you know, write a food budget. You're supposed to, you know, scavenge and grab what's necessary to survive. You know, we have survivalist instincts. The problem is, like I said earlier, now we have too much food. So what the hell do you do there? I've done that approach, you know, where I've planned and, you know, counted and all that fun jazz. And it's useful, and it's really to be viewed as training wheels. So, you know, don't just, you know, there was a quote from another class I took. The instructor said, the further you take a human away from his natural diet, the more likely he is to go back to it. So, you know, you got to add context there. So there was a point where I was having a problem with sugar. I was eating too many sweets, and it's really kind of out of character for me. I don't know what's happened in the last few years. And, I had a craving for these mocha ice cream sandwiches at Trader Joe's. They're pretty good. They're like 140 calories a piece, but you'll eat the whole box. This is a problem.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I had to get myself off that, you know, because I recognized that, you know, just they were addictive, you know. So I'm like, what's the next closest thing on my palate to that? Because the thing is, your palate's not that complicated, you know. Like, you could really figure this out if you think about it. So I'm like, well, I'll eat bananas. They're kind of close to that. They're in the kind of same ballpark in terms of, you know, how it hits my palate.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. Pretty sweet. And not as sour as other fruits, you know. Just more sweet, you know, closer to like chocolate and things like that. That's why it mixes banana and chocolate mix well, by the way,
Right.
as we know. So I'm going to get bananas. And then I took it a step further. I'm going to go back to eating oatmeal and milk, and I get the ultra-filtered non-fat milk that I made a video on. Some of you may have watched it. And I mixed it with the banana, and then suddenly I don't need those ice cream sandwiches in my freezer anymore,
Yeah.
But that's what and I learned this little trick from my stepbrother. I may have mentioned it in another podcast, but he's the guy we all fucking hate. I mean, he's Eastern European. We're not related by blood. My father married his mother. Well, she already had them from a previous marriage. So I don't know why people don't understand what the word stepbrother means, but I find myself having to explain this in real life. But he's 100% Polish, and remember, we're not blood related. So don't say, "How are you?" Well, if he's Polish and you're Cuban, I always get that question next. I'm like, no, we're not, we're not related. I should just say my father's ex-wife's son, but we were raised together. I've known him since I was 1 year old. It's weird to call him anything but my brother.
Right.
But anyways, he's 100% Polish, and he has those Eastern European genes. So, naturally muscular looking, has good muscle insertions. His muscles are real poppy, at baseline, tight skin, veins, low body fat, relatively speaking, and he stores it in the right places. So, he goes in the gym, touches a weight, he can go on a machine program and he'll fill out, in ways that take us years,
Yeah.
And, he hates that he's too big.
I know, right?
God, I hate him. I hate him for this. He wants to do yoga and other shit like that. And I'm like, bro.
I want that Adam Levine body,
Yeah, man. Sorry, Mario, if you're actually listening, I got to give you shit for this. But, he wants to be, he's in L.A. Everybody else is 30 pounds lighter than he is,
Right, yeah.
He's what? He's 5'11", and he's 180, 185 pounds usually. And, but, because of his muscle insertions and his skin elasticity, he looks more muscular. He looks like a fitness model. If they airbrushed him and put him in the right lighting, he'd look like those guys in the magazines. Maybe he has to lose, maybe he'd have to lose like 3 to 5 pounds. He doesn't understand maybe he does now. He messes with photography, but back in the day, we didn't understand the magic of photography, and we also didn't understand the role of steroids. So he always thought he wasn't lean enough because the guys in the magazines looked harder and more lean and all this other shit than he did. But I'm like, they're probably now as I'm older, I'm like, they're probably just as lean as you are, dude. They just airbrush them, tan them, and put them on freaking drugs,
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm digressing. So he had a sweet tooth problem, and the description I gave just now is relevant to this because he was freaking out about his sweet tooth when he had visible abs, And, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be as interested in, I don't think I would have been as interested in this stuff because he started getting hyper aware of, what a healthy diet is and how to eat, even before he moved to California. This was when he was living at my dad's house at the time. And he turned me to the fitness magazines, and, he liked a more balanced approach. He didn't get on the extreme bandwagons back then, he was like, oh, men's fitness. So it was, basically, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean meats, etc. And when he was in college, he would stress eat pies, like entire pies in a day,
Oh, yeah.
and go to McDonald's and get, large McFlurries, Oreo McFlurries. Or when he was in football in high school, he'd eat an entire box of Oreos. He had a problem with sweets.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's because he's built for anaerobic sports, I wonder if that has something to do with it. Having all those type 2 motor units, and pretty naturally explosive guy,
There's a lot of glycogen.
I think so. I think that might be part of it. The type of activity that his body type favors requires a lot of carbs, So, he had a sweet problem. I had a salt problem. I liked fatty foods, salt, I had that kind of a palate. But, that's changed, and I think that probably has to do with the way I train, how much muscle I put on probably.
Sure, yeah.
But, he was paranoid about diabetes. Like I said, he'd read the magazines. He got into the whole health aspect of it. And he was 23 at the time, freaking out about how he's going to get diabetes because he's eating entire pies, And, it's not unprecedented. Some people get type 2 diabetes in their 20s, but typically not with that body type. But, it's good. He addressed the issue, and he recognized it as an addictive thing. And the way that he addressed it was probably when he was, 2011? He was 29 at the time. And it was just before I moved out to the West Coast. And he took this approach where he's like, I'm going to substitute these sweets, I guess, these concentrated sweets that, are very high sugar, they're basically high sugar, high fat, but the sweet is what, you tend to taste when you eat stuff like that. Even though the mouthfeel and all that other good stuff is there from the fat, the sugar tends to overwhelm everything else, And he started replacing that with these fruit binges. When I first moved out there, I'd come off a crash diet, so I was developing a bit of a sweet tooth at the time. What did I do? I was trying to get lean and get down to 155 and starving, and didn't look like I trained because I really didn't, And I got there and I was real thin at the time, and, I was craving sugar because I got too skinny. And then, he just told me you got to calm down with that, man. It's going to drive you crazy. It's like, I've been doing this fruit thing. So I'm like, all right. So I tried it with him, and we would eat an entire bag. We ate an entire bag of grapes. One time we ate an entire watermelon, and I was like Austin Powers the next morning. And fast forward to today, it's been 10 years since, I moved out there. Now I live in Phoenix, but that was 10 years ago. And now he eats sweets once or twice a year. He doesn't eat things that are intensely sweet. I'm not just talking about like pies and stuff or even fruit. I don't know if he includes fruit in his diet anymore. He might, but
yeah,
at this point he's basically been at this, and it's like anything else, an up and down thing. There were ingrained habits there. He had a break, but 10 years later, it's a special occasion type deal. Like Christmas or New Year's, or maybe his birthday. I don't know. You have to ask him which holidays he decides to do this on. I'm guessing Thanksgiving is probably the big one. But he doesn't touch anything sweet. Like, he doesn't drink diet beverages. He doesn't, chew sugarless gum. Like, he knows that stuff is addictive and it's a problem for him. So that's kind of how he addressed it, though. It started with eating like pounds of fruit to calm his palate down, and then even though fruit isn't as, intensely sweet as a pie, it's still, like, again, the human palate is not that complicated,
right.
that fructose and the little bit of sucrose in fruit that touches your tongue, your brain doesn't really register the difference that much,
Sure.
And that's where I learned that little technique. I was like, I'm having a chocolate problem. What's the closest thing on my palate? And for me, it was bananas, and
absolutely.
And oatmeal and milk, specifically in milk. It doesn't really quite have that sweet profile when I use water. So I always cook it in milk, and it tastes better anyway, but I get the ultra filtered stuff to bump up the protein. But I'll eat the banana by itself, if it's a snack. If, for breakfast, I throw it in the oatmeal, and I don't feel like I have that chocolate sweet craving has kind of gone away. So that's a little hack for those of you with a sweet tooth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I've found that the people that I know that are lean for their body type, right? Whatever that can vary. Like you're talking about, like your stepbrother, he might be 11%, right? Just at a nice healthy
I
body
think without
composition.
even trying, he doesn't break 15.
There's other people who might be at a nice, healthy, sustainable body. Their body fat percentage might be 18%, right? This varies,
Set point,
but people who are at a sustainable, healthy body composition that also have a high level of fitness, that train, all these things, they all eat the same things every day. That's something I've noticed about them.
And so do the people that are fat, and overweight, obese.
Right, yeah.
They eat the same shit every day. I remember, I'm trying to think. There was somebody I knew that would eat a donut every day. Then he took the donut out and he lost 10 pounds, But
right.
But the whole point is these guys, like, I knew a guy who was really unhealthy with his diet when I was younger, and he would eat like a pound of bacon every day, same time every day, Like,
right.
The people that eat junk food,
bacon.
people that eat junk food, and the people that are on a healthy diet, whatever you want to call that, they both have a routine,
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that around, because that's the thing. So if your habits are if you're going to fall into a routine, because that's what humans do, then substitution works really well, because you can make that routine. Mm-hmm. You can turn that chocolate into bananas. You can turn that into applesauce and oatmeal in the mornings, rather than frosted mini wheats or whatever. And I like that. I've had a lot of success in my own diet making those substitutions.
Yeah, you follow your palate. You try to get the closest thing that's not as dense, right?
Right. And I found, like, with breakfast food, so that's one where it's really easy to eat stuff that, like, I remember when I was a kid, like, eating toaster strudels, sweet cereals, right?
Yeah.
There's a million of them. and milk. Like I kind of was wanting that dairy and the grain. Well, now it's funny because what I do is, especially now that it's getting colder outside, I eat oatmeal. And I eat it all the time. The only time I don't eat oatmeal for breakfast is pretty much in the summer when it's really hot. So I just don't want it. Too warming.
Yeah.
But I pretty much eat oatmeal otherwise all year round. And the thing is, like, I still, like, I put honey in there. I'll put molasses in there. I'll put fruit in there. Just kind of whatever. Like, right now it's fall, so we made some apple butter the other day. I've been mixing that in there. It's delicious. But yeah, so it's kind of funny now that you've said all this. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty much eating the same things that I did as a kid. It's just I found better substitutions for them.
That's pretty much what I've done, yeah.
Higher protein, higher quality fats, a lot more fiber. So that's funny.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we were supposed to talk about eating out. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, you can do this, right?
Yeah.
And eating out too.
So the problem with eating out, and you're all going to do it, so there's some little hacks there that we probably need to talk about, that we're going to talk about. But the thing to understand is, when you dine out at a restaurant, not even a fast food place gives you the macros, and so does Chipotle and places like that.
Yeah.
There's a few issues here, and I think that's kind of why my brain went where we just went. Typically, restaurants are they're a business. They want to make money, and what makes money is what tastes good. So they are going to make the food flavorful. And there are three components of a meal or an entree or an appetizer, whatever you're picking, that do that. Number one, fat and saturated fat, especially saturated fat, solid, gives it mouthfeel, gives it more flavor. Salt gives it more flavor, and sugar gives it more flavor. So you're going to get one or all of those three when you dine out. Typically it's fat and salt, most likely if you're eating a hot meal. If you're eating a dessert, it's going to be fat and sugar. And salt, you just won't taste the salt, it's overwhelmed. But you're typically getting, multiple of those in a meal. The problem with eating like that all the time is you train your palate to require that. Your palate adapts to that, and then everything else tastes bland. Healthy food tastes bland. It's like, well, we were eating this shit for, millennia. And now all of a sudden, your palate's a special snowflake, So the issue is when you do it all the time, you require it. And then you complain that nothing tastes good. It messes with your taste buds. And it's absolutely true. There's been studies on this with salt. So this is why I tend to recommend, if you're actively trying to lose weight, you kind of want to put the tasty foods on the shelf as much as you can. If you're going to do it anyway, you just understand your trajectory is going to be nonlinear. You're going to have more weeks that nothing happens than weeks where you lose. There's little hacks that you can do. Like if you go to a restaurant, obviously, one of the things I do recommend, always order a salad before your meal, so you get your vegetables. Not because a salad is quote unquote healthy, but because, it's high in fiber, get some food in your belly, you're not starving going into a meal that is most likely going to be high calorie.
Right.
And, you're getting your veggies for the day. You're getting all your micronutrients, your phytochemicals, etc. Then when you order an entree, people will say, well, I ordered the chicken breast, or the healthy, protein item, right? Well, it's not just a chicken breast, though. They've cooked that in grease or butter. They've added some sort of marinade to put additional calories in it beyond the food itself. This is why it is virtually impossible to compute macronutrients, specifically fat. Let's be real. It's virtually impossible to compute how much fat is in a restaurant meal. What you can do is you can go to a chain restaurant, pull up their macros of the same meal and try to use that, and then err on the side of higher versus lower, which pretty much means you're probably going to partially fast or fully fast for the rest of the day to make that work.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is more on the people that are losing weight, right? If you're maintaining your weight, you're at a good place, or if you're gaining weight, this is less of a big deal. You can get away with it one time a week as long as you're, not overindulging for the entire weekend. If you go out to a restaurant Friday or Saturday night and, you're pretty good the rest of the week, you're probably going to be fine. But if you're actively trying to lose weight, that's where things get kind of crazy. It's hard to do that.
Right. So let's kind of illustrate that a little bit. So you go to the restaurant and, you're trying to be good because you're trying to lose weight. You're trying to be healthy. Mm-hmm. And so you order the wild caught salmon. It's on special today. It's wild-caught salmon with asparagus and lemon aioli.
Yeah.
It's made with olive oil too, right? Right. It's got to have, this is like fresh pressed olive oil. Okay, so, we all know what a tablespoon of olive oil looks like, right? Not very much.
Yeah. They're putting
one tablespoon of olive oil.
Less than the cook is spraying on that pan, far less.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So one tablespoon of olive oil has 14 grams of fat in it, and it's about 120 calories. Now, how many tablespoons of olive oil do you think is in that lemon aioli? And how many tablespoons of olive oil were used to cook that wild-caught salmon and asparagus, right? It's not one. It's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And like you said, we don't know. But, it's pretty easy to do the math there on just the olive oil alone before we even think about the rest of the food to see that we could have several hundred calories of oils that we're eating in that meal at a restaurant. And again, if you're like most people and your caloric needs are somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, maybe less if you're female, then that's a huge portion of your daily calories. And we haven't even gotten to the rest of the meal yet. We're just talking about the oils that are being used. Mm-hmm. It's never going to work.
You're getting several hundred calories just from oil. And then something like salmon, that's a high-fat fish that I recommend everybody eat because it's the best fat source available. It's very high in APA, icosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, omega-3s. It's the way I like to explain it is when you get it from fish, those two omega-3s, you're cutting out the middleman. When you eat plant-based omega-3s like seeds and nuts and avocados and things like that, you're getting ALA, alpha-linolenic acid. And that has to be converted, and we're not very good at converting that. So that's why fish has this special place in the diet. But anyways, it's an aside. Back to what you were saying. Yeah, no, you're getting probably several hundred calories from oil, then a few hundred calories from the meat portion, and then the aioli, like you said, the dressing or the condiment, as I'll call it.
Yeah.
And then if, let's say you get, let's even use a more deceptive example, like a salad, right? Oh, I'm just getting veggies. Well, no, you're getting cheese. It'll be like blue cheese crumbles on there or some shredded cheddar, same difference,
Delicious.
Yeah. Then there's dressing, unless you can get the vinaigrette and then you might get some carbs, but, there's low fat options for dressing. So you can kind of maybe bypass that, if you make the active choice. Then they're going to put nuts in there. And then now bacon's a big one, for the last 10, 15 years. That's been a big one.
Of course.
So you've added all these fats on top of, the vegetables. And then you're going to have a meat portion on there that was also cooked in olive oil, probably.
Yeah, right.
So you could easily make a salad 1,200 calories and your budget's 1,500, if you're a small female, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or if you're a male, that's, already almost over a third of your calories. It could be higher, especially if you order something else. And let's say you have a drink, a cocktail, you're going to get, easily 300, 400 calories, depending on the cocktail. A shot alone has about 130. Now you're adding, sugar, sweetened beverages to it. So one could easily walk out of a restaurant having eaten 2,000 calories.
Yeah, for a single meal.
Yeah, or more. Pizza is one of those foods I say, yeah, it's just off limits if you're cutting. It's just not going to work, unless you're making your own very carefully,
Right. Yeah, so how do you avoid this? Well, don't go to restaurants. That's the first thing.
Yeah, but we say that, they're like, well, fuck you, dude.
Right. But, like we say, like you're going to do it anyway. So there are a few things you can do, though. I like your kind of rule of like, if you're cutting, man, just do your best to stay away or fast all day. Yeah, I like that idea. I've actually done that for the last couple of years based on your advice. If I know I'm going to eat a steak dinner or something in the evening, for breakfast, I'll probably skip that oatmeal that I'm talking about, but I'll have like the protein. I'll have a couple scoops of protein powder and some water or something, and I'll just get just enough carbs to kind of make it through the day. And I might not eat anything for lunch, just kind of maybe a snack here or there. And that way I go to dinner and I've kind of got some room to eat that massive meal. Because when I go out to dinner, I don't want to deny myself,
right.
Especially if it's a nice dinner. I don't want to sit there and be like, well, I'm only going to have half the cake. Like, no, I go out to dinner to have an experience, right? So that works pretty well. But I think there are some other things you can do if you find yourself in a situation where you are eating out a lot. And it's not just special occasions where you can do this, because you're just not going to be able to fast all day, all the time to make up for your eating habits at restaurants. So, one thing is that I picked up from you a long time ago is beverages. Switching to non-caloric beverages. There are problems with these too, but I think that in the short term, if you have been used to drinking Dr. Peppers and Cokes and Pepsis, diet options are pretty good because you can at least cut out the caloric content of those beverages.
Yeah. And, it's a process, Eventually those could be problematic too. For some people, not. I'm not a
Sure.
big...
Yeah.
My brother hates Diet Coke because he thinks it's addicting and it's so bad for you. And, people have made this a hot button issue. But for some people, it gets the job done and, gets them to moderate their diet better. For other people, they just want to eat more sweets and then they eat more diet food. That's an observation we've made. And then,
Sure.
you have to understand what type of person you are. Extreme flavor for me, if I have too much of it, it's a problem. It becomes addictive,
Right.
For some people, not so much. There's people that can have, like I could drink. I can have one drink and I'm good. I can go, weeks without drinking. That's not a problem. Some people cannot touch alcohol because it has obviously has addictive properties. That's why we have alcoholics, right? There's certain foods that work the same way, in similar ways. If it has an extreme flavor profile and you are prone to binging, then it's probably something you don't want to, you want to work towards not having. I don't want to come across as saying, just stop cold turkey, because that's going to result in you binging even harder. This is a process. It's just finding those substitutions that can satisfy you, but not to a point where, you need to go crazy and eat all of it. Then obviously there's, situations where somebody needs a mental health provider, of course. There's eating disorders where, people are just binge eaters. They'll overeat anything, and that's more complicated than what I'm talking about. But I don't suggest anybody stop anything cold turkey unless they're, they can do that comfortably. It's a process, I had a chocolate problem recently, so I had to go to bananas. That seems to be working fine. I'm probably consuming fewer calories. I don't track anymore. And, with that tracking, I just, say that it's training wheels, but that just reminded me of something else with eating out. When you're eating out, you're not going to balance your macros. You're going to eat a high-fat meal. Your
Right.
your fat by nature is going to be out of balance. So, no, fuck that. Don't worry about your macros when you're eating out. Worry about total amount of calories, total food. And you're doing that by estimation too. Remember, a smartphone app is no more accurate than a food label. Food labels are extrapolated data points from measurements collected 100 years ago. A piece of bread and, a piece of Wonder Bread at the store today, it's not going to have the same number of calories as that piece 100 years ago. It's going to be reasonably close probably, But we don't know. There's studies out there that they've, ran food through bomb calorimetry or chemical analyses to look at the macronutrient content, and they found a mismatch. So labels aren't accurate. Food apps aren't accurate. But what's my point here? The number itself doesn't matter. It's the consistency in which you eat and the way you eat, how consistently you eat. That's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Because as we've mentioned before, like if you are in a weight loss mode and you're trying to lose body fat, then, at the end of the day, it's like, did it happen or not? Did the scale go down? Did you lose measurable amounts of body fat? Like that's the arbiter, right? And if it did, then you ate correctly for your goals. If it didn't, then you didn't, right? So so there's ways of getting to this without tracking every little thing, and also understanding that even if you do track, there's like I said, there's lots of
There's
error
sources
involved.
of error.
Yeah. So are there any other substitution kind of moves we can make, whether it's at a restaurant or if we're out like on the go?
Yeah, I see what you're asking me. Typically, if I'm at a restaurant, my rule is don't do the obvious, like I'm not going to go order the most deep fried thing on the menu, Like
Wait, so you're telling me the chimichanga is not
yeah, it's
not the thing to get?
Like, let me give you an example. I love Indian food, especially Northern Indian food.
yes,
it's
so
so
good.
damn good. But I eat it probably once a year because it's really rich, So, there's certain things that I have in a category. I guess it's like my brother with, all sweets, Deep fried, greasy stuff, probably once a year. The only reason I eat pizza maybe 2 to 3 times a year is because I'll have a meet or something, some event, it'll show up, and then I'll just eat it, but I'm not going to order it. I'm not going to go out of my way to, like, Christy just had a bikini show, and she wanted to go get wood-fired pizza, so I ate that with her, and that was fine, but I don't seek out pizza. It's a very heavy meal, just like Indian food's a very heavy meal, just like Mexican food's a very heavy meal, It's got all the problems of typical standard restaurant food, like your salmon dish that you described, and then some, because then you have,
Right.
it's like, okay, we're already, there's the whole fat issue, you cook stuff in fat, but then you deep fry it too and breading on it and all sorts of other stuff, like,
Right. Yeah. There's no pretense of health with these meals.
No, it's like, it's more brazen, I should say, whereas the other stuff's more pernicious, So I have all that, those brazenly bad foods are in the once a year category, and so, like, there's a hierarchy, right? I don't eat out as frequently as I used to, but I used to eat out all the time, and it was usually on the weekends. And I had my rotation of places I went to as far as my routine spots. So, I typically went out to breakfast near my old apartment, just because I like the coffee, like the service, like the outdoor seating, and I ordered basic stuff. I get like an egg white omelet, I get the toast and berries, the basic breakfast, something I'd make at my house. I wanted the experience, that's why I'd pay for that. I'm like, man, they make a killing off breakfast, by the way. But for like a dinner or a lunch, it was either like I go get sushi, and I get like nigiri or sashimi, or I get like some seaweed salad. These lower calorie options, that still taste amazing. I love that stuff. I was like, I enjoyed it. I was, not just because it was low calorie, it was good. But I wouldn't order what's that stuff called? The fried sushi. What's that sushi stuff called? Tempura. I would not order tempura.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't order that. I wouldn't order pork gyoza. My friend Eric might order it, and then I'll have one. But rarely would I order any of the fried stuff at the sushi place. It was always nigiri, sashimi. Might get a poke bowl with that, and some steamed rice, and that stuff's pretty low to moderate, probably moderate fat. It's not super high fat. It's raw. So I'd go there, or I'd go and get pho. So I'd probably get a little more fat there. But I'd get the veggie pho. I liked, don't laugh at me, I like tofu. I think it's fine in certain dishes. It's not something
good. It's good in certain Asian dishes. Yeah.
And that dish, it's good. And that might be it. Certain Asian dishes, that's a good way to put it. It works. It works. It's not. I'm not going to substitute my protein for it, though.
It's the texture. Yeah. It's a texture thing. It just it works with that.
It just tastes really good with those rice noodles. But I know that they're frying it a little bit.
Yeah. Of course.
But it's not crispy, so I feel better about it. But I'm not under any illusion that stuff's not high calorie. But I typically go there because I could pull back from the rest of the day and make that work.
Right. You're not going to make the Cheesecake Factory work.
No, you're not going to
with any amount of fasting.
No, you're not going to. And this is not us saying you can never eat this stuff again. It's context, right? If you are cutting weight, unless you are a 7,000 calorie a day maintenance person, it's not going to work. You're not going to have 3 slices of pizza, a beer, and breadsticks and lose weight on that, because you've probably eaten all your calories just from that meal.
Right.
And the thing is, there's a mismatch. The volume of food is pretty low, but the amount of calories is very high. So that's the problem with those brazenly unhealthy foods. I like that.
Yeah,
word. I like that word today.
I like that. That's a good. We have to remember that one. Yeah. And so this is how like people get flabbergasted about their weight loss journey, because they'll do really well during the week, and then you go do one of these over the weekend. And if you have a blowout dinner, you can put yourself in a caloric surplus for the week, and then all of a sudden it's like you've either stalled out or maybe you gained a little bit.
Look, I like to ask this question. Do you stay at a 5-star hotel every week? I mean, maybe
No.
some people might, Generally, I think most of our listeners probably don't. You don't go to a 5-star resort every week and spend $2,000 a night on a room. You might not even do that in your lifetime.
Right.
So you could scale that number down to whatever you consider expensive. But I'm thinking of like Las Vegas. Those rooms can get up there. I've never done it personally. I don't think I will. It's not my thing. But we're using an extreme example here. You're not going to go to a 5-star Vegas resort penthouse suite every single weekend. So why the fuck are you going to eat a damn whole pizza every weekend, and then wonder why you're heavy? So,
Right.
that's kind of how I look at that. You want to put these Like, why are you going to a restaurant, first of all? Are you going for the experience? Most of the time, the answer is yes. People like to go out to eat, talk bullshit, relax, get a break from the week, So if that's the case, then it should be more about the experience, less about the food. Obviously, you want the food to be good, but, I remember one time when I moved to LA, I would, I used to take a different approach. I would assume that I was getting triple the calories I needed, and I'd eat, a third to a half of the plate. My brother's like, I feel so bad doing that. Wasting food, wasting money. He connected the price of the food to to throwing it out, like I've wasted money.
Yeah.
And completely ignoring the idea that we just went out to hang out,
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because I'm kind of that way, especially if I'm going out to anywhere that's more than like, $15-$20 a plate, right?
Mm-hmm,
Like if it's a $35 a plate dinner, I'm kind of like, well, I'm going to eat this whole thing.
Yeah. There's
my money's worth.
There's obviously a price point for me too.
But I also, by the same token, I had this experience recently. I had to travel last week, and I had to go to a wedding. And
I typically took home leftovers too. I want to put that out there. I rarely let the restaurant toss the food, but I usually heated it up later and would eat it. But
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, so I was traveling, and I went to this wedding, and I was in a couple of big cities, and I was meeting with old friends and all that kind of stuff, and of course, eating out a lot. And the last place we went to was a Mexican place, and we were with some old friends from Dallas, and it was good, but I had the experience afterwards. I was like, man, I could not tell you what that tasted like. I have no idea. Like, I know I got some sort of taco and enchilada combo plate, right? But like, and all I know is like the food was good. Like, it didn't strike me as like, it was pretty good. But I could not tell you what it tasted like. It was just, I had Mexican food, I guess. The point being, by that point, I was there entirely for the experience of seeing those people, not for eating this plate of food. I wasn't looking forward to that food. It wasn't something that I'd been thinking about for a few days that I really wanted to do. It was entirely about seeing those people. So if I was to go there and just eat half a plate of food, no big deal.
Yeah.
Right? That wasn't the goal of the meal anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good way to look at things, if that's
if I'm going to a steakhouse, I'm eating everything,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But I don't go to steakhouse every week. The big part of the reason that people eat out every week is because of they're hanging out with people,
Yes.
So I think that the first practical step that you could take to manage this issue is to categorize what's routine eating out versus special occasion eating out, and put those restaurants and those entrees there,
Right.
Remember, and then you got some that are like your 5-star resort, vacation that you do once a year, maybe 3 or 4, whatever, everybody's different and people spend their money in different ways. But there's obviously things that you save up for and, put aside. You have to approach dining out this way because it could be very calorically expensive otherwise,
Yeah.
And, getting into debt in terms of food results with a big belly, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept, you don't want to be up to your eyeballs in debt. You don't want to have, your gut 55 inches, ideally,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that image that you put. So we've got our once a year foods. We've got our
every week foods.
We've got every week foods, but we even have those that are maybe like once every month or two foods, right? In between that,
Yeah.
But yes, and then we get to like what you're saying, the every week foods and then everyday foods. So if the places that you're eating out fall into that every week category, I think that is a great place for substitution, right? That's where you're probably going to get the most bang for your buck by ordering something that's on the lower calorie end of things, like your breakfast place that you like to go to, because that's going to actually have an impact if you're eating there all the time. Meanwhile, go ham when you're eating your once a year blowout dinner. I mean, that's what it's for. Eat as much as you want there. Why limit yourself?
Yeah, exactly, because it's a special occasion, So that's where I would suggest starting, and then from there, like I said earlier, step 2 is you're not meeting your macros that day. It's not a perfect day. You're gonna eat light the rest of the day. Keep your protein up, keep your fat down, keep your carbs reasonably down, and then enjoy the meal, hang out with your people, and, if you have to leave some of it for later, you can do that. That's an option. You have several paths here that can work. Like I said, there were like 3 places that I typically went. I had pho, I had breakfast, and I had sushi when I was eating out all the time. And I stayed at a pretty good weight doing that, I lost weight doing that at one point. I was posting about it on Instagram a couple years ago. And those were my spots. And I can invite people and had a good time. Nobody's worried about food. I had the items I ordered. Again, routine. I don't need a lot of variety. At those places, I ate the same thing on the menu every time because I found the combination of foods that I liked that worked. So that's the other part of it. And, save those brazenly unhealthy foods for your once a year, twice a year deal,
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that's kind of when you become a mature eater. That's the word that comes to mind.
First world problem, by the way.
Right. Yeah. When you solve this first world problem and you gain some maturity in managing your health and your nutrition, it really becomes something that you can do. I don't want to say intuitively because it's not intuitive at first. You have to train yourself to do this, but it's something that you can do inductively, right? You don't have to sit there and map out all of your foods for the day that you're going to eat. You can simply, by virtue of eating consistently and eating the same things all the time, you can watch the scale, you can watch your waistline, and then know and basically look at your patterns of eating and then adjust them until the result is what you want. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're getting to the same spot as if you had tracked. It's just that, you've adjusted your daily habits.
Hey, and look, if you don't want to eat like this, that's also an option because, nobody's telling you have to do this. But what I tend to tell people that push back real hard, I deal with that a lot too.
Yeah.
I just want to have a life. I just want to have a simple meal and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, not that I'm saying you can't have a life and that you can't have a simple meal. You absolutely can. We just explained how. But, if you just want to eat pizzas and burgers and, heavy food on a weekly basis, several times a week, then the simple response that I give is your goals are incompatible with your lifestyle. And that's okay.
Right.
Yeah. But that is the undeniable reality. There's not a path for you if you want to eat 2,000 calorie meals 2 to 3 times a week and lose weight. It's just not going to happen. That's just the facts of life, Some people are born with, 5,000 calorie metabolisms, and they're not listening to this podcast.
Right.
And they're probably not even training a lot of the time. These people also hate eating, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But most of us can't get away with pizza 3 times a week or 2 times a week or even once a week, You're going to eat pizza, 3 breadsticks, a salad full of shit in it, and, 2 beers. And expect to lose weight. It's just, sorry, it's fun, I partook in that once last year. I had a couple members moving out. That's exactly what we ate.
Yep.
But I can't do that every week, and I know that's a cultural thing too. Some people do that. I want to go watch sports and drink beer and eat pizza. Well, your lifestyle might be incompatible with your goals.
Right. Yeah, and it's that, like I said, that's okay, but just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Recognize that that's a fact, and then figure out what it is that you really value, and then it makes it. That's the thing. So I'm going to close out on this.
Yeah,
just an observation. So these guys they're all Navy SEALs, these disciplined guys like Jocko Willink and who's the other guy, David Goggins.
Okay.
So these like former Navy SEAL guys, there's a bunch of other ones, right? But they tend to be these like military types, and they build an online presence and platform that's basically all about hardcore discipline, right? Hardcore, self-reliance and, and honesty and all that kind of stuff. And, on some level, I don't really disagree with any of that. I think it's great. Probably more people need a habit that instills discipline and self-reliance and all those things. But here's my thing. I don't think David Goggins deprives himself or has to work hard or think about waking up at 4:30 every morning and working out. I don't think that's even something that ever crosses his mind as being hard to do. I think he does it because he loves it. And so when he posts about waking up at 4:30, It's because he's already motivated to do it. It's because he has a value set, and somewhere along the lines, he's done the calculus and he's figured out that my values are this. I'm going to make my lifestyle align so that everything that I do in my life aligns with my values. And then it's pretty easy to just live that lifestyle. You don't really have to work that hard. I say work. Sure, he works hard. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he doesn't have to expend an enormous amount of willpower to maintain that lifestyle. And that's because he's got an alignment of his lifestyle with his values. And so I think a lot of people kind of get the wrong message, though, from these guys that's like, oh, I have to overcome my shortcomings with willpower so that I can force myself into this lifestyle that this guy's living over here. And it's like, well, that's never going to work.
No,
you can't white knuckle your way 4 months in, 4 years in, 20 years in. It's never going to work.
No, you've already fucked that up if you think that.
Exactly.
I've learned that the hard way too.
Yeah, everybody's tried. We've all tried it, right? You can't white knuckle for more than a few weeks, really. And so if you want to make diet changes, it's the same thing, right? You have to figure out like what are the things that you really value, and then start to change your lifestyle so that it aligns with that. So back to our point about camaraderie. If that's really what it is that you value about going out to eat, then just recognize that. Go find ways to go out to eat so that you're spending time with the people you like the most. And then, don't worry about the food so much, or don't worry about eating the food so much.
Yeah. I think that the market's done a decent job of addressing this problem. We have so many alternatives now in terms of like food you can buy at the store, grocery food.
Yeah.
And that's great. It just hasn't trickled into fine dining yet. Fast food has made a lot of strides in the last 30 years. But, so I think at some point in our lifetime, the market will address this issue at restaurants and be able to make foods we can eat that still taste really good, I hope to see that because, we can feed how many billions of people now, and we can pack protein into chips, There's so many innovations that have come out of the food industry. I find it hard to believe that we have not figured out how to deliver fine dining without getting people fat,
Right.
And yes, to the academic that thinks that's an oversimplification, it is. I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
Yes, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go. We're going into the holiday season here. This is middle of November, and there's going to be a lot of temptations, but maybe now you have some tools in your tool belt to deal with that, and you can be more intentional this Thanksgiving and Christmas season with your eating out.
Yeah, those are once a year type deals, by the way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, don't diet through the holidays. That's stupid.
Yeah, that's why I always tell people, I always tell my clients, this is a holiday. It's not a season, right? So go ham on Thanksgiving, right? Go ham on the day before Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. But when Monday rolls around, get back to normal, right? You don't need to be pounding sugar cookies Monday through Friday, the week after Thanksgiving.
No, you don't.
Right. Same thing on Christmas. You make the whole week of Christmas a fun feast time. But the week after Christmas, like, just get back to normal.
Yeah.
And you can't do that much damage.
You might have to do a mini cut. There's a study out probably 7 years ago, and this is one that kind of, as I like to say when I'm talking about professional research, this is one that kind of checks out on the ground. They don't always do. They were analyzing holiday weight gain over a course of several years. You'll have to look this up. It's probably on PubMed somewhere. Yeah. And they basically found these people would gain weight because they don't binge on Thanksgiving, Christmas. And then they wouldn't lose the weight the following year. And then they'd do the same thing the following year, and the weight would steadily go up year to year to year.
Yeah, right.
So depending on how hard you're going to go, if you go hard enough to gain a few pounds, try to lose those few pounds in the several weeks that follow, and get back to normal. And you should be able to do that without anything too complicated. If you have more weight than that to lose, then, that's a different story. But, if you do that every single year, apparently there's a theory that, these will gradually gain weight. And since we gradually gain weight with age anyway, plausible. So,
yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
Just clean up, restrain a little bit. Don't do anything crazy. You should be able to lose that pretty quick.
Yeah, I like it. All right. Shall we sign off?
Yes, we shall. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at www.weightsandplates.com, on Instagram at @the_Robert_Santana, or weights_and_plates for the gym.
And you can find me on Instagram at marmalade_cream. And yeah, that's it. That's it. You can't find me anywhere else. I don't want to be found anywhere else.
Neither do I, man. Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.